We all know about how various media outlets will occasionally, at least, publish corrections when they get things wrong. Well, I guess when you consider how the left has turned so many things upside down, I suppose, frankly, we should not be all that surprised when the legacy media actually issues a correction when they get something right. But that's exactly what happened when NBC referred to the gunman behind the recent Minneapolis shooting as a he, and then later apologized because that biological male was gender confused. Amazing. So what does this incident tell us? Well, with me to discuss this is Joshua Arnold. Joshua is a senior writer at the Washington Stand. Joshua, thank you so much for joining me. Great to have you with us.
Hi, Jody. I'm really happy to be here. This is such a crazy story.
Crazy story. I'm glad you said it first. So let's just start. Remind us, if you will, about the gunman's state of mind as it relates to his gender.
Well, the police identified that this young man was, in fact, a man. He had been identifying as a woman, or at least as transgender in some ways. He legally changed his name from a masculine name to a more gender-neutral name at the age of 17, and his parents consented to that name change. But in some of his writings, he said that he regretted his transition. He knew that he could never be a woman. And yet you have so many of the legacy media outlets using female pronouns to describe him, referring to him as a woman. In the case of NBC, they referred to him as a man and then corrected the article and said, oh, he actually, or she, they said, used female pronouns. Well, maybe he did at one point, but he was confused, and now your audience is too.
Yeah, and that's what is so crazy about this. This, even as you said, the police identified this as a male. Do we have any reason from NBC for the correction? Why did they go back on reality?
You know, it's not really clear. As you showed the picture of the correction there, it was very bare bones and brief. One reason might be that the guidelines from the Associated Press, the editorial guidelines that kind of govern how most major news organizations style their papers, requires sites to use preferred pronouns. We don't do that here at the Washington Stand. There's some other sites that are more loyal to biological reality than to what the AP says. The AP is really far left. Another reason just could be that NBC knows their audience. And they know that their left-wing audience expects this and demands it of them. They'll get in trouble from the scolds over on Blue Sky if they don't use preferred pronouns. And so instead of sticking with the truth, they decided to instead tell their audience what their itching ears wanted to hear.
That is exactly what the issue is. Veer away from the truth, so that you give people what they want to hear rather than what is true. Wow. You know, we're singling out here NBC, Joshua, but in truth here with our discussion, they certainly were not alone in caving into this false narrative. There were others out there doing the same thing, weren't they?
Absolutely. Almost every story I've read from a mainline site refers to the shooter as a woman, which would be surprising because mass shooters are very rarely female. And in fact, it wasn't true in this case. He was a man, but many of them had. I have been pleasantly surprised to see some that used to follow preferred pronoun guidelines seem to be moving away from that thing. Sites like Fox News and the New York Post seem to be moving away from that. But you'll only find it among your most conservative news outlets that they will use biologically true pronouns. Sites like the Daily Wire, the Washington Stand, other sites like that.
Yeah, and you would think it's the job of reporting to just report truth and let people deal with it, learn from it, but you're there to report. So the point here is not to stigmatize anyone, but Our culture needs to be confronted for denying reality, which certainly has consequences in the long run. And you are a journalist, outstanding journalist. Isn't it, like I was just saying, the job of a journalist to report fact and not fiction?
That's right. If reporters aren't reporting fact, what purpose are they really serving? That's our job. Is I research, what happened, and then present a shortened, true version of that, so that other people can learn what happened without having to do all the same research I did themselves. And if I don't do that reliably, then people can't trust what I say. And that's what we've seen with the mainstream media over time. Is the amount of Americans that trust media is in the tank. It's right above Congress in Gallup's latest survey. You've got Congress's lowest, and the mainstream media is after that, and everything else is higher. Only about a third of Americans actually trust the media. But more than just it being the responsibility of reporters to tell the truth, it's also the responsibility of Christians. We need to tell the truth, confront people that this is not true, that these people living a transgender lifestyle are hurting themselves by not living life in the way God intended.
Everything you just said there, Joshua, needs to be communicated to those who produce the media as well as those who consume the media. The job is to tell the truth, and I want to thank you for the incredible you do and all of you at the Washington Stand. Joshua Arnold, senior writer with the Washington Stand, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Jody.